Hi, I'm Caroline Mitchell, canine behaviourist at Good Doggy. So this video has come about really at the request of some of you, but also it's something that a lot of my clients struggle with. So I feel it's kind of useful to address this problem of how do we socialise a dog that is showing reactive behaviour or aggressive behaviour to other things, people, you, dogs, animals in your environment. All dogs need to get out, exploring a new place, getting physical exercise. These things are extremely important to a dog's mental and physical health, and even more so if the dog is anxious or territorial. Anxious dogs need a boost to their mental health more than anybody, and territorial dogs will really benefit from widening out their territory and really diluting their space. But if your dog is reactive or shows aggression to you or other people, then it can be a really tricky thing. Obviously, the temptation is to avoid going out for walks with your dog, but this can be done. It's possible to socialise a dog that's showing reactive and aggressive behaviour. You just need to be careful and take the right precautions. And if you follow my advice here, you'll also have the beginnings of a rehabilitation plan too, which is just an extra bonus. So in this video, I'm going to talk more about what aggressive behaviour actually is, how to manage your dog's emotions and their reactive behaviour when you're out in public spaces, how to manage your dog safely in public, and ways to encourage and reinforce the calm behaviour that you'd really prefer. But let's talk about safety first. So before we get into anything else, we do have to talk about safety, safety of your dog, and the safety of others. In the law, your dog must be considered to be under control and they must not cause fear when in public places. So in order to protect your dog, you must consider others first and how they may perceive you and your dog's behaviour. Not everybody is familiar with dogs, not everybody understands dog behaviour. So to somebody that's not familiar with dogs, a dog straining and lunging on the end of their lead might be considered quite frightening. It won't really matter how much effort you're putting in, what your dog's been through, or how hard you've been trying. They won't have any sympathy for that. All they will see is a dog that's really scaring them. That person could make a complaint, and nobody wants to get a knock on the door from the police or the dog warden because their dog has frightened somebody in public. So the first thing to consider is whether the lead and harness you're using is secure and appropriate for your dog and you and your combined needs. So take some time to do some research into the different kinds of harnesses and things like that you can get. Some have front clips that give you more control. Some dog harnesses come in 3 parts rather than 2, which means that they're more secure for dogs, especially with larger chests. A big chested dog could easily slip out of a standard 2-point harness, but a 3-point harness means that there's a strap that goes around their waist as well. So it means they can't pull out forward or backwards. I have a recommendation for a good one on my website. Check out my blog for that. But any sort of 3-point harness will be good for you. Maybe a double-ended lead will give you a bit more control and help you feel a bit more secure when you're walking your dog. So the double-ended lead has a clip on each end. You can clip one onto one part of a harness or one onto another. You could put one on a collar, one on the harness. So there's loads of different options there, and there's different ways to hold it as well. So look into something like that. Also check the lead that you're using. Most dog leads that you buy from a shop are just too long. If you're holding onto the handle part and your dog is at the other end, they could be quite far in front of you, and a dog that's pulling ahead of you that far in front might also be considered quite scary. Plus also you have a lot less control when they're quite far away. Maybe also consider whether the lead you're using might slip through your hands, which again would give you much less control. A different kind of lead might solve that problem, or possibly wearing a pair of gloves with grips in their hands. Gardening gloves often come with grips, so do weight training gloves. So look into those things if you feel like you need a little bit more control and grip when you're holding onto your lead as well, because the last thing you want to do is be walking a dog that's being reactive to another person maybe in their environment and the lead is slipping out of your hand. You need to feel like you've got the maximum amount of control. And when you feel like you have the maximum amount of control, so maybe you've got your lead set up well, you've got a properly fitting harness, and that's all clipped up well, that gives you a bit of confidence as well, and that's really important too. So if you feel like there's even the slightest chance of your dog showing any kind of aggression to anything in their environment, then it seems like a really obvious to say, but you must keep your dog on their lead at all times. If your dog needs to get off lead for exercise, then considering places like dog fields, which you can hire privately, where your dog can run and explore and you can just have some fun with them. They can chase their balls and do whatever it is that they want to do. But that's a safe place to do that. In a public place, it is a definite no-no. No matter how well you think you know the space around you, anything could happen at any time. And an off-lead dog is not in your control at all, especially if they've been known to show aggressive behaviour to other people or animals or whatever. And I know this does sound obvious, but I've kept it in here because even on my own walks, you'll be surprised at how many times off-lead dogs have chased and even growled out, had my trousers grabbed the other day, even while their owners are just sitting in a chair, just doing nothing at all. I knew what to do in these situations, so I knew how to de-escalate these situations. I've had 20 years of practice doing that. But if that had been somebody who didn't know dogs very well, who was already quite anxious around dogs, maybe a child, or perhaps it might have even been the dog warden themselves out for a walk with their own dog, or a policeman even, then that could have been disastrous for your dog. So obvious as it is, if there's any chance at all that your dog might show aggression, keep them on their lead. And while we're talking about safety, we really do need to have a little bit of a chat about muzzles as well. And I know that this is a conversation that often is quite upsetting for owners. I have this conversation quite often with people about their dogs and wearing a muzzle. They feel a whole stream of emotions when the word is used, perhaps guilt, and also they feel like they're admitting their dog is aggressive. They feel like they're giving up. None of these things are true. A muzzle is just a tool, and it's a tool to keep your dog safe. So if your dog is showing any kind of aggression, if you think they might growl, bark aggressively, chase, lunge, grab sleeves, snap, or bite somebody, then this is just something that you may just have to just take on the chin and consider getting a muzzle for your dog. Those things are all aggressive behaviour, and you will have to admit that if that's what your dog is doing, they are showing aggressive behaviour. So they do need to wear a muzzle. They are at risk of others. If your dog is showing any of those behaviours, a lot has already gone wrong, and your dog has escalated his behaviour to this level. It is not going to take very much to push them just that one step further, and then you'll be in a bite situation. Remember, it is not the responsibility of other people to react in the right way if your dog shows any kind of unwanted behaviour or aggressive behaviour or reactive behaviour. If somebody panics and screams, waves their hands, picks up the dog, kicks out or whatever, this growl or lunge could very quickly become a lunge and bite situation. I'll come back to why that is in a bit, but however you feel about that, however frustrating that is, the fact of the matter is that your dog is the one that will suffer the most if something goes wrong. If your dog does something regretful, it's not the other person or the dog, no matter how they reacted, no matter what they thought they should have done. This advice in this video is about protecting your dog. It's not about what is right or wrong. So it won't matter if you think that the other bike should have just stopped, or the dog should have had a better recall, or the person should not have waved their arms in the air. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. At the end of the day, if something goes wrong, your dog's the one that's going to pay the penalty. So here we are trying to protect your dog, because the public, everybody else cannot be trusted to do the right thing. But you already know what's going to happen. You already know your dog really well. You have the option here to change things. So anyway, back to muzzles. If your dog is showing aggression, it's now time to just accept that and to make a plan. Your number one dog is to keep your dog safe. We know that. And the best way to do that is to protect everybody else. When you're seen to be protective and responsible and with a well-fitting muzzle, the worst can never happen. People will not be afraid of a dog that is wearing a muzzle and under control as much as they will a dog that is not wearing a muzzle and is lunging and getting close to them. So we need a well-fitting basket-style muzzle, not a fabric muzzle. A fabric muzzle will hold your dog's mouth closed, and these are great in emergency situations. If your dog needs their nail clipped or they need an injection, the muzzle's on, the job's done, in, out, and it's off again. So it's only on there for a minute or two at the most. A basket muzzle allows your dog to open their mouth fully They will still be able to behave completely normally. They'll be able to pant if they need to. So when they're wearing this for extended times on their walks, you're not putting your dog in any risk by wearing this muzzle. He'll still be able to pant. Most dogs can drink water through their muzzle, and you can feed treats through the muzzle as well. So because they can open and close their mouth just as normal, this muzzle is not going to restrict them. It's not going to make them feel anxious once it's been introduced to them, and it's going to keep them safe. It's also not going to change their behaviour, or at least it really shouldn't. Your dog is not going to behave differently just because they have the muzzle on. With the fabric one, that might happen. So you're not going to see your dog trying to bite, or you're not going to see your dog barking because the muzzle's prevented those behaviours from happening. But with a basket muzzle, you'll be able to see exactly what your dog's doing. It's not going to change anything. And you'll know that the training you're going to do is actually going to be working for your dog, because that will be the thing that's changing their behaviour, not the muzzle. People that have used the fabric style muzzles in the past will think that their dog is improving, when actually they've got no real information about that, because the muzzle really is doing all the work. As soon as you take the muzzle off, they go back to their old behaviour. But that's not going to be the case with a basket style muzzle. So anyway, you want a nice, well-fitting muzzle. It's got to be large enough that they can open their mouth, but it's also got to have enough tightness that they can't get it off. So your dog will probably want to put their paws underneath the muzzle here and here, and they'll try and push it off their nose that way. So it's got to be small enough they can't do that, big enough that they can open their mouth. And if you look on the internet, you'll find different places that do muzzles that are made to fit your dog. They have a lot more variety of sizes, so you'll be able to find something much better than perhaps what you could in the pet shop. A muzzle is also a very, very good visual way of others knowing that there's something different about your situation. So you would like to hope that maybe a family out walking with their young children, or somebody with a dog off lead, would see that your dog has been muzzled and would try and perhaps keep their dog or their child away from you, or maybe they won't approach without having a conversation with you first. There are a lot of other reasons why dogs wear muzzles. It's not just about aggressive behaviour. So be prepared to be asked questions about whether they're a scavenger, because that would be the number one reason to have a muzzle. It's the most recommended reason that I suggest muzzles to people, because the dogs are scavengers. They just pick things up off the ground and they eat things they shouldn't and whatever. So there's lots of reasons to wear one. So people might ask, but that's the point. They won't just come straight over and try and pet your dog. Their dog won't just run over, because you would hope they would see that. So hopefully that'll cut down the amount of times that happens too, which will make your walk a lot more pleasurable as well. So now we've got your dog on a secure and short lead. They're wearing a well-fitted muzzle. We can start thinking about leaving the house and beginning this socialization process. So first of all, it'll help to understand a bit about what aggression actually is. A question I get asked a lot is he anxious or is he aggressive? Well, actually, this is not an either-or situation. Aggression isn't a label or a status. It's a behavioral response to the escalation of an emotion. And that can be any emotion. So it could be fear, anger, frustration, loneliness, even joy. All emotions can escalate to the point of showing aggression. So I think of a scale, and let's think of fear as the emotion, for example. At the bottom of the scale, the dog is in a neutral state of emotion, which basically means they're happy, content, calm. They're neither excited, they're not depressed. They're just basically in the middle. They're very neutral and they're satisfied. All of our emotions will start here. And then as the emotion intensifies, so in this case fear, as that fear starts to grow and become more intense, the behavior then intensifies as well. So you start to move up the scale. So a frightened dog might start to stare, he might start to stiffen up or pull away from something that's scaring him. As the situation continues to escalate, the fear will continue to grow and the behavior will continue to escalate as well, and it will go further up the scale until we pass the threshold line. I talk about threshold a lot. I have a video about threshold, which will go into a lot more detail. But basically, when your dog crosses the line of threshold, this is the point in which they have stopped listening to you, and they are starting to now use their reactive brain. So they're more concerned about what's happening around them. Whatever it is that's triggered them, that will be their main focus. You're just a blur in the background now. They're not listening to you. They might be able to hear you asking them to sit or to stop doing something, but they're not able to pay attention to that. The brain is switched into reactive mode and they are relying now on their emergency behaviours. This is reactive behaviour. When they're relying on their instinctive behaviour, the behaviour now starts to become more intense. Maybe they start to bark, lunge, they're spinning on their lead, all of those kinds of things. But eventually, if the fear continues to grow, then the behaviour continues to intensify and we cross another line. So we've gone past threshold, and now the next line now is aggression. This is the aggression line. So now the dog is showing aggressive behaviour. They're growling, they're snapping, they might even be biting at this stage. So in order to get to that point, we can see that a lot has escalated to get to this line. If a dog has shown aggression, a lot has already gone wrong. So this is not the time to take risks. If your dog is above the aggression line, maybe they are just growling and lunging, but think about how much more it's going to take to get them to bite somebody. They're in that zone now. They stopped listening to us ages ago when they went past the threshold line. So there's nothing we're going to be able to do now which is going to be able to change their behaviour. That ship sailed a long time ago when we passed the threshold. So basically now they're in a reactive state. They are in an emergency situation. They are not thinking at all. The situation has become extremely precarious. And as your dog's behaviour has become precarious, so now we're outside and we're in a real life situation, so will the behaviour of the person or dog that the behaviour is being directed at. So remember I said you couldn't rely on other people to respond appropriately to your dog's behaviour? This is why. If your dog can get overwhelmed by emotion and behave erratically, then so can other people and their dogs also become overwhelmed by emotion and behave erratically. They will be over threshold and they will also be in their reactive brain. As your dog is escalating, their fear is growing, so their behaviour is now escalating. So they're not thinking straight, and neither is your dog. This is a recipe disaster. You have a dog that's over threshold, also over aggression line perhaps, and now you have a person who's over threshold. Neither of these people are in their thinking brain. Neither of them are thinking, I remember when I was at school and I was taught how to behave whenever a dog was being aggressive towards me. The dog's not thinking straight. They won't know to sit. They won't look at you. They won't recall. And that person is not remembering anything they've been taught either. You know, maybe something on Facebook last week said, oh, whenever you're being chased by a dog, you should stop. They're not thinking about that. They're not in their thinking brain. That ship has sailed. Both the dog and the person are both in reactive mood. You can't blame your dog for the way they're reacting, and the person can't be blamed for the way they're reacting either. The situation has just got out of hand. But there is one person in this situation that is not over threshold, and that is you. So you're the only one that is in their thinking brain. So you're the only one that can change what is happening. So you must take control of your space and where you go. So this is about you now managing the situation. You're the one with the insider knowledge. You turn up at the park with a dog, you know how your dog will behave. Now you know that people can't be trusted to react appropriately to your dog. Now you know why. Your dog is just reacting inappropriately, so are they. So now we need to know how to manage the situation, and we need to learn how to manage the dog's emotional state, because you are the only one that has the power to do this. So when we're managing the situation, we know that when emotion escalates, so does the dog's response to it. And they will continue to escalate until the response becomes aggressive. So when you're socializing your dog, learning to manage these emotions is essential. And usually the best way to do this is to manage your space. So this is the space between your dog and the thing that he is triggered by, the thing that he shows reactive behavior or aggression to, whether it's dogs or people, bikes or rabbits or whatever. The further you are away from those things, the milder the intensity of the emotion that he will be experiencing, and therefore the milder the reaction. Not only that, but when you've created a lot of space between your dog and whatever it is that's triggering them, the other people around you will feel safer too. And they will also be less likely to react, because when they feel safer, their emotion doesn't escalate and their behavior doesn't escalate either. Even better though, walking your dog at a distance means your dog is coping better. No one wants to see their dog get so overwhelmed that they lose control of their own emotions and behavior. So managing your space is a great way of controlling the outcome of the situation, but it's a much better way of helping your dog cope better. So this means for you, when you see your dog's trigger approaching you in the park, then you must move out the way. You must get to the side of the path. You must move into the field or whatever so they can pass with tons of room. This could mean crossing the road, walking into a muddy field, ducking into a driveway, or even turning and going back the way that you just came. Whatever it is that you do, you must move far enough away that your dog doesn't visually react. With practice, you'll find out what that distance is for your dog. Every dog is different. It could be 2 meters, it could be 20 meters, it could even be more than that. Dogs that I've started working with that have showed reactive behavior to another dog or a trigger, sometimes it's literally as far away as you can possibly see, but it is what it is. So with practice over the next wee while, you'll figure out what is your dog's safe distance, and you will now have to start choosing where you walk very carefully, because that distance might be bigger than what you can get in certain places. So, if you often walk in a park, which has quite narrow paths, if your dog needs 4 meters of space, but the paths are only 3 meters of space, you can't walk there because you won't be able to make enough space to pass somebody safely and carefully. So you might have to consider changing your locations. Definitely don't use places with alleyways. I've mentioned narrow paths already. Don't go to places where you could get easily surprised or trapped or caught out. Think about the spaces that you're going to. Big, open, wide spaces are brilliant for dogs that show reactive or aggressive behavior, because you can go and stand in the middle of a big space and you can see all around you. If something is approaching you, you've got plenty of time to get out of the way. If you're just walking around a windy corner and all of a sudden something's in front of you, you don't have any time to change that situation. That's going to be a bad situation. So think about the places you're going and think about the routes that you might take. Maybe for a while, you'll have to drive your dog to somewhere that you can see all around you. You can wait for a nice safe time to get your dog out of the car, take them where you need to go, big open space, walk them there. And as a bonus, of course, when you have lots and lots of space, you have time to react as well. So if something does go wrong, if he gets overwhelmed, nobody's going to be at risk, because you're going to be far enough away from them that they can just keep passing and they'll barely even notice anything went wrong. But we don't really want to risk that. In a perfect world, you'll make enough space that your dog will just be maybe just a bit concerned, but they're still in their thinking brain. We haven't even crossed the threshold line. They're still thinking, they're listening to you, they're responding to you. So while you're out on your walks, you will have to be as alert as they are. You have to make sure that you're aware of everything that's happening in front of you, behind you, beside you. And you have to make sure that you are in control of that space at all times. And another thing about choosing the space that you're going to go and walk at, don't choose spaces where lots of your dog's triggers will be. Imagine, for example, that you are frightened of ducks. If you go to the duck pond, even far away, a lot of ducks could be very overwhelming. That could be frightening for you. That could be very triggering. And then one flying at you or walking towards you could also be very frightening. 1 or 2 ducks swimming around in the distance might be much easier to cope with. And dogs are the same. So consider all of the things that trigger them and don't put them in a situation they're not going to cope well with. If your dog doesn't cope with off-lead dogs, then don't go to the kinds of places where lots of off-lead dogs go. If he doesn't like cyclists, don't walk along the cycle path. I know these things seem obvious, but it's really important for your dog's own mental health more than anything that we're not putting them in situations they can't cope with. If they're constantly in places where they're afraid, that's not good for their mental health at all. And that will have a knock-on effect into other areas. It might cause trauma. It might make them less able to cope with other kinds of anxieties. Anxiety is something that grows mostly because we do keep putting our dogs in situations where they become anxious. The more anxious they get, if they get it over and over and over again, then suddenly you find out you've got a separation anxiety problem, or now your dog's become anxious about other things because they've had so many bikes go past them that they're in a heightened state of anxiety. And now all it took was a carrier bag flapping in a bush to really scare them. Now they're scared of carrier bags. This is how anxiety grows. So it doesn't do them a good to take them to places where their triggers are. Don't listen to anybody that tells you that you need to expose them to their triggers to help them get used to it. It doesn't work. It just makes everything worse, and it means anxiety spreads into other things. So it's not just about making life easier for you. This is about their own mental health and taking them to places they can cope with. And just, I guess, finally, a wee note on avoiding dogs, because very often people ask me, what do they do if a dog just comes over to them? And this could be a dog that comes over. It also could be a child that just runs over. But with dogs, hopefully, you would hope that the dog that's coming to approach you is socialized well enough that they know the difference between a dog that is warning them off and a dog that is being friendly. But if not, you have done your absolute best. You have made loads of space. You have made your dog safe. They're wearing a muzzle. You have them on a short lead. So you've done everything you can. It would look pretty obvious that you are not there to make friends with that dog. So you would hope that the people that are with that dog would call them away, or the dog would realize themselves this is really not a great situation and they would move on themselves. If they don't know, you've done the best you can. So how do you cope with this? You just have to hold on tight to your dog, do the absolute best you can to hold them, and you have to wait until the situation resolves itself. Your dog can't hurt anybody. So really at this point now, you're just waiting for the other owner to take some responsibility for this, come and get their dog and take them away. As much for their own dog's safety as your dog's comfort, really. But you did make your dog safe. So hold on tight, wait for the other dog to leave or get taken away. And that's the best way to handle the situation for your dog, because when you panic and start to try and drag your dog away, that doesn't change anything. The other dog will just come with you. He's come this far. He's going to keep coming with you. So standing in one place, showing some confidence to your dog, holding on tight, waiting for the situation to resolve. And now you're going to wait until your dog has completely relaxed. And that's not a 2-minute job. Your dog has gone very, very heightened. Standing still is the best way to let all of that emotion drain back out again before you restart your walk. So stay where you are, let all of that emotion calm down, let yourself calm down, because probably you'll also be kind of all stressed out. Remember that it's not up to them to respond appropriately to you, but you've done your best, and that's the most important thing. Let it all settle down before you start the rest of your walk. So that's really important. So hopefully you've managed your space very, very well. And you're now starting to find that your dog is actually behaving really well. They're perhaps starting to walk past triggers that they never would have, even though you are quite far away from them probably. You're probably walking through muddy fields or whatever to try and make space around others. But nevertheless, you're starting to see behavior that you really like. And if that's the case, you're going to want to cash in on this and encourage this new behavior. So eventually you'll be able to start getting back to normal walks together. And for this, I always recommend either using a marker word or a clicker. Either your marker word or clicker will basically be taught to your dog so that they understand that that means they're doing a good job. So the reward marker or the clicker will tell your dog, keep going, keep doing that, and I owe you a treat. Basically, that's the way it is. Your reward markers or your clicker is not supposed to change their behavior. So if your dog has already been reacting, don't use it at that time. Wait until you see good behavior and use your clicker or your marker word at those times. You don't have to stop. You're not trying to get them to follow treats or look at treats. All they have to do is do what you want, and you're in the background there using your clicker or using your marker word to let them know they're doing the right thing. This is perfect for a situation where the trigger is still present. You just get to keep on walking and keep on clicking. And it's also perfect if your dog is wearing a muzzle, because it's going to be much easier to press a clicker than it is to try and get him to take a treat. You'll have to keep stopping and it becomes very awkward. Every click tells your dog he's doing a great job while he is doing it. So every time he hears that click, he'll know he's doing well and he's starting to expect a treat, which is great. That gives him a lot of confidence as well, and it helps to boost resilience. Anticipation is really, really good for dogs that have low confidence. There's a lot of good reasons to use a clicker or a marker word. I did a whole video about using a clicker for reactive dog training, so check that out because it goes into a lot more detail about getting the timing right and things like that. But if you're going to start doing this kind of training, start introducing the clicker to your dog now so that you can start using it when that good behavior starts to naturally show up for you. So this is a brilliant way to boost your dog's confidence and resilience and mark the behaviors that you want. So check that video out so you can start using that properly. And basically, as your dog starts to be encouraged in these new behaviors, as his confidence and resilience starts to grow, then you'll find that that distance that you're working at, whatever that started as, if it was 20 meters, it will start to reduce. So you'll find that eventually you'll be walking actually really quite close. So maybe those walks that you started on where you couldn't go in a certain place because the path was 3 meters, but you needed 4. So after a wee bit of training, that distance will come down to 3 meters just by itself. You're not doing anything different. You're just managing your dog in a situation and rewarding good behavior. But that distance will come down to 3 meters, and maybe then you can start walking in those spaces again. And that's the kind of effect that you should be getting when you start using a marker word or a clicker for dogs' behavior that is just naturally happening by itself because you're managing the situation better. So basically, in conclusion, we're going to think about safety first, consider a muzzle, make sure that the harness is secure, use a short lead,